hitting distance of each other. They like to like bop each other in the face.
Oh yeah.
So like they share just about everything. They don't even have like separate food bowls, or like there's two food bowls. So yeah, I mean there are little babies. We're super excited. It's made the quarantine bearable, but
Will is watching and seems like a huge fan. Say that they're looking very much to it. Oh, it reminds you of Dragon Ball Z meets Mad Max.
Honestly, not a bad comparison. I think Cinnamon's an amalgamation of all the things that I enjoy myself, but like very cherry picked. So there's the little like Super Saiyan moments and the dystopian cityscape, and just a lot of little bits of flavor from all these little things. So yeah, that's more or less an apt description.
Oh yeah. Let's see. This old helmet made a really awesome reference. Small dogs are just cats, and cats are useless. What?
What?
Wrong. You lose. I think it's a quote. And JD says, "What sort of college degree does one pursue in order to assemble a thesis comic?" That's a good question.
That is a good question. So my actual degree is in illustration. But that's only because I transferred in a little late. So at the Columbus College of Art and Design, they have a comics and sequential art program where you study comics history, comics practice, alongside kind of general art and production. But it's one of very few undergrads for like comics specifically. And so I transferred in about halfway through. And ended up taking mostly comic classes and kind of integrating it into that program kind of by side. But that was the senior capstone that I did. It was 2 semesters, so a year's worth of school, developing and producing the first issue of a like perspective comic. Of something that could be expanded to a series, but like wasn't necessarily like you didn't need to pitch it to anyone. You didn't need to like intend to make more. You just had to make it as if you could, kind of a thing.
Have you thought? I mean, I know you just said you finished, but are you thinking about doing master's work?
Actually, yeah, I applied and was accepted to the comics program at CCA. Out in San Francisco.
Congrats.
Well, I got accepted last year, right before everything shut down.
Yeah, of course, right?
So I deferred, and it was amicable, but it really put a lot of plans on hold. And honestly, like I feel like it was the right move, because I fell into everything with Cinnamon so quickly. I would love to go back. I was a perpetual full-time student, and I loved being in academia. But I'm just excited to be making the comics I want to make right now, and kind of getting my feet wet, getting some real world experience. It's something that school can't always prepare you for.
True.
You get real good at doing assignments and turning things in for the validation of your professors, but
Do you remember what your first comics exposure was? Do you grow up in a comics family?
A little bit. I wasn't necessarily allowed to read a whole lot of comics growing up, or it was very locked down, and like my parents had to like kind of vet things. So I did a lot of sneaking of like online scanlations of manga, and just trying to sneak whatever I could. Kind of later into high school, I started picking up more like indie graphic novels from like Half Price Books and secondhand shops, and like, wow, this is super cool. Like, I read Nate Powell's Swallow Me Whole in high school, and it was like, wait, this isn't Spider-Man like at all. It was fabulous. It just totally changed my paradigm. But it wasn't really like, it didn't feel like something I could touch as an artist. It felt like something that comic artists did. And I was just a general like illustration student. And so I owe a lot to transferring to CCAD because they kept pestering me and they kept saying, hey, you know, like you can try comics. Like, you could probably do that. And it took a while to warm up to it, but like, man, college was eye-opening. Being exposed to local comic book shops and local comic shows and small press conventions, and just seeing comics as something that's produced and like produced by people who are passionate about these stories. Really felt accessible. So
what before that college kind of like opened your mind to comic books as a career? What career did you have in mind?
I spent a long time doing like general editorial illustration and web development, and just kind of this general like branding package where I could do the front end development and I could do your branding solution. So it's kind of this multifaceted graphic design, web front end, illustration as needed. So like I wasn't doing what I loved or even something that I necessarily enjoyed. But it was very focused on like, okay, well, what does it mean to make money in art? And it felt like my first answer was not the one that I wanted. And so I ran with it for a while. And then I transferred to CCAD in 2018, and it was kind of a new city, new school, fresh slate. What is it that I actually want? Because I'm deeply unhappy making illustrations for lawnmowers and dentists and soul-sucking corporate culture.
What's so funny is that all of those soul-sucking corporate folks are so thankful to have creative people to, because they, so they might not be able to think of anything that's super creative to bring people to their brand. So I look at it and think to myself, you're amazing, because there's so much that I could never do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very necessary job. I just think I went into it with the wrong reason or the wrong justification for putting my dreams on hold, or for really like pursuing something that I had passion for. Comics in particular, I just like I was really hesitant to want to draw the same character over and over and over again. I'm like, I don't want to draw the main character 100 times per issue. But as I got further into school, I took a few animation courses and realized that, like, wait, I drew this character 1,000 times and really enjoyed it. I should probably revisit this idea of comics. And so comics was all the things that I loved about illustration and all the things that I loved about animation, where like I could tell a story and actually like flesh out a narrative. Because, you know, illustration is telling a story in one picture, but like, you know, I can string those together. That's so exciting. I can have them say things, because that's so weird. You don't see illustrations with comic dialogue, unless it's like an advertisement and it's like very specific.
Sure, so, or like a newspaper editorial cartoon.
Yeah. So like, I think I took a really roundabout way of answering all my own questions about what comics mean and what they can be. And so like, I think I had this personal renaissance like 3 or 4 years ago of like, okay, you know, why did I stop reading comics? Why am I not making comics when that's something that I clearly enjoy? And so like, I mean, studying it in school helped a lot, helped pad out a lot of that knowledge. And CCAD was phenomenal. If you have any interest in academic study of comics, then I highly recommend CCAD.
What was the thing you learned while studying there that what just set something that you thought you knew about comics on its head? That completely is the opposite of what people think.
I don't know if it's necessarily the opposite of what other people think, but it was definitely the opposite of what I thought. Is just the nature of producing a comic. I had a very clear experience going to Cartoon Crossroads in Columbus. It's a small press comics convention, and it just felt like an artist alley or a dealer's room at any other convention, but it was all small press comics and indie creators with their new books for the year, their new zines, or whatever it is that they were making. And it was just so, I don't know, authentic feels kind of sappy, but it was whatever people decided to make, and they put it out for people to enjoy. Mm-hmm. And it had worth because it was sitting on that table for sale. Yep. And it was wild stuff. Zines drawn in crayon, and like there's one, I'm trying to remember, it was like in an envelope, and to read the zine you had to like tear open the envelope, and so you had to like ruin part of this thing to experience it.
Chaos.
And like it just felt like there was something there that I hadn't tapped into. Mm-hmm. There was some part of this creation like relationship that I felt like it didn't have to be like Netflix or Marvel or DC or like these big hitters in any sort of media. And so I think taking that and applying it to like a larger release on the direct market, like Cinnamon has like kind of coalesced with that idea of small press indie comics. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know, like large press indie comics, because I mean, Behemoth's been amazing to work with.
It's growing like crazy. I don't know if it's going to be small press for long.
I know it's been absolutely insane to watch, because they had like 3 comics out when I signed with them. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, you know, we're going to throw my hat in the ring with these guys. Because honestly, like the stuff that they're putting out is not just like top quality, but it's exactly the kind of stuff that I was interested in making. Mm-hmm. Just like avant-garde action comics. Absolutely. And that really got me going. And it felt like, okay, this is a cool home for Cinnamon. I'm super down for this.
So explain to me what the difference is between Behemoth proper and Happy Tank, as the place where you landed.
Yes. So Happy Tank is the brainchild of Kevin Rodatelli and Rob Cannon. And they are both just incredible, talented dudes who are just like super down for this. And their idea was to make this imprint full of comics that are like kind of Adult Swim-esque, or like the late night, irreverent, like just off the wall stuff. And the minute they started saying that, it was like, okay, you know, this is music to my ears, because I can pull out the stops and just make the weird stuff that I want to make. Mm-hmm. And they pretty much gave me the equivalent of that small press con table to say, okay, you know, they believed in the vision of Cinnamon, mm-hmm. to say this is the kind of action comic that we want, because it's just so weird. And I think that kind of sums it up. Is they're just kind of they're mining a lot of the comic adaptions and comic re-releases from like when you have MFKZ coming to the States. So it's been great to see that side of things kind of grow. And so it's just kind of a specific subset of Behemoth, where Kevin knows exactly what kind of projects he wants to greenlight and exactly what kind of flavor he wants from these comics.
Oh man, JD
so,
has asked a really deep question here. It says, are creators more likely to make more money per book through an indie publisher like Behemoth, or printing publishing a book solo via Kickstarter? That's complex.
I am not super qualified to speak on that because I have not kickstarted a book. And like, I mean, I feel like both routes are valid. Especially more and more as Behemoth is quickly gaining ground and selling crazy volume.
Yep.
It's just been crazy to watch expectations surpassed.
I would say certainly with Behemoth, you have probably a bigger reach sooner than you might have through a self-done Kickstarter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell you what, like the only previous book I put out myself, I self-published. I didn't kickstart it. I just funded a small run myself, and I was happy to sell like 100 copies of it, and like that felt successful at the time a few years ago, and so like it is dwarfing those numbers to an absurd degree. Cinnamon sold way better than any of us not expected, but it was like, okay, first time creator, first time series. You know, like I'm not a household name by any means, so I think there's benefits to both sides, but I'm not really like the most qualified to talk specific numbers or like profit margins. I just draw the dang thing.
What was the name of the book that you sold your 100 copies of?
Oh, it was called Deviled Egg Dominoes, and
Deviled
it was
Egg Dominoes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It was more like a collected anthology of all the comics that I made in school, and it was just kind of my letting go of all my academic comics. So there's a lot of like 3-page, 5-page, 8-page short stories and just off the wall stuff. So
is that even something that exists that people could hunt down, or is that like the 100 run is done and good luck finding one, y'all?
No, I still have a fair amount of stock, but at the beginning of the quarantine, like I sold at my last convention right before March and kind of the shutdown period, and it was so hard to deal with fulfillment that I just kind of took things down online, and I haven't sold in any shows since. So like, I mean, if you're ever in the Midwest, like catch me at comic shows, and definitely be able to pick up a copy, but I should be getting it back online soon.
When you put it online, where is the right place for people to follow you or to find a way to communicate with you?
Yeah, so my weird little corner of the internet is blackbit.world.
Oh, nice.
It's lots of disparate blog posts and just kind of my general, like, here's where I am. But the best place to like continuously follow is Instagram. And that's blackbit.exe.
Why Blackbit? I've got to know.
It just sounded cool.
It does sound cool. It makes me think of the bit from Tron.
Yes. I mean, it's got a bit of sci-fi flavor to it, and I think that's something that I'm very interested in. Science fiction as a whole, I think, has a lot of power to like illuminate human experience and say, well, you know, how do humans react if their eyeballs are carrots? And like, I don't know, like the sky's the limit, and just saying, okay, well, we're going to introduce this foreign thing and then tell a story about it. So I think you get glimpses of that in Cinnamon. It's really like an unchained action comic, but there's a little bit going on behind the scenes that I'm really excited to let peek through, especially going in. I mean, issue 1 comes out in literally days, and I'm so excited. And then issues 2 and 3 will be following after that. And that's where it's at right now. But we're going full steam ahead.
All right, everybody. It looks like August the 5th is a release date for Cinnamon. So you've got exactly 1 week-ish to get with your local comic shop and make sure it's on your pull list. Because if the past has been any indication about what Behemoth books do, they will sell out in the first week, and then you'll have to like hunt and peck to try to find them. So don't miss out. Thank you so much, Victoria, for spending time with us. I wish you all the luck in the world in having this sell out so you can make all the books you've ever desired about anything, including Carrots for Eyes, people.
I am going to do that.
Thank
you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much. Don't go away, everybody. Coming up after this is my crazy show, Mishmash, and we're going to do some crazy mish-and-moshing.
I thought that's the 7th.